Hello, everyone. Welcome on a webinar. I'm glad you found the time to learn something about building big data pipelines and lesson learned. First, some technical things. I hope you hear me and you can see me. If not, please comment below, like write some message in chat, like whether everything is okay or not. Hopefully it is. Let me double check it. Yeah. So yeah, I believe all okay. So yeah, the second thing is like if you will have some questions during the presentation, just put it down to the chat. I will go through it on the end of the presentation. So let me start. First, let me introduce myself. So my name is Lukas Veres. I am delivery lead for big data projects. I lead big data delivery projects and act as a delivery lead and solution architect on many projects. I had experience with big pharma companies and finance-related companies, more than 10 years. My projects were most focused on big data creation, pipeline generation frameworks, or big data delivery for customers. So what I will talk about, right, on this, let me go first to the company, right? So basically, I'm working for Profinit. Yeah, Profinit is a company which has many competencies from software development to big data and data science. Is more than 22 years on the market, is based in Prague, has more than 500 experienced professionals, has many ISO certifications, and so on. So it's quite established company in this market. So what I will be talking about today. Today, I will talk about how big companies can easily waste millions of dollars, throw away a solution they spent 2 years building, and force the engineers to completely rebuild architecture, and how to avoid this experience and learn from it. Yeah, this experience is basically personal, right? So it's attached to my person. I go through this. I was a member of many projects. Many of them I was building or I was leading as a delivery lead or a solution architect. But everything is basically based on my personal experience. So maybe in your company it will be different. Maybe other members will look at the same things differently. But I would like to talk about this from my way, and I would like to inspire you and make you think about how my experience can help you and your teams to thrive. So for that, we will go through some lessons learned. Yeah, and basically everything what I will be talking about will be about the big data. Yeah, so all projects were related to big data. But first, let me start with the basics, right, to make it easier for you to understand my ideas and this story. So for that, we need to define what big data is in big data in big companies. So what is big data? Yeah, the mainstream definition of what we call big data today comes defined as the 3 V's with 3 characteristics, right? Velocity, volume, and variety. It essentially describes what makes big data so big. Yeah. So from the data velocity perspective, it's like how fast we can deliver data to data lakes or to the customers, right? Whether it is batch or real time. Then it's about the data volume, yeah, how big data are, and also about the variety. Yeah. So how structured the data we can get. Yeah. Sometimes these are tables and database. Many times there can be API calls, which are some unstructured JSON, XML files, and many others. But we have also business perspective on big data. Yeah. from this side, we think more about what business think about what can be big data or their approach on that. For that, we're recognizing 3 V's also. The first one is validity. So for validity, it means like we are having these questions like, is the system under development or is it stable? Yeah, many times it can happen that you want to load some data, yeah, and some system, they have it, yeah, in that system, in the database, but they're still building it, yeah, and maybe it's still not a good time to load the data from there, because you don't want to work in unstable environment, and they can add new tables and new columns, that they can basically move columns between tables and change relations, and they can update the API and so on, yeah, and that could have impact on your delivery. So you need to think like, is the system valid for your purpose or not? Yeah, are the data secure? Yeah, do they follow some processes which can basically enable this security? What do you need? Can you trust this data? And also, are the data compliant with the laws and regulatory policies like the GDPR or CCPA? The second V is basically value. So value is, you need to think like from the business perspective, what kind of value this data can bring to you. Yeah, maybe you can have, you hear that that system is important for you, but you need to think first, what you actually can get from the data? What is your goals? Yeah, so basically you need to set up your value objectives and then use the chosen metrics. And the last V is visualization. So for visualization, we are talking more about understanding what the data are about. Yeah, so you are looking for some information, for some descriptions in documentation, or maybe some analytic pages, because when you are loading when you want to use some data, then you want to know like what this data are about, and maybe not always the best way to always talk to analysts and ask them like, hey, where do you have this and this information? Maybe you want to first have it somewhere written. Yeah, so this is also good to know in front, yeah, to have some visualization perspective about the data, how they looks in the source system. But we also have a technical perspective on big data. So for that, we are talking when we have big data, that it is a set of open technologies for processing large amounts of data. Usually you have free access to them with option to get support, yeah, from third parties to support special components. Also, there is like data storage, yeah, how we are storing this data. It's HDFS system or some other storage system. What are the structures of the files, right? So it's Avro, Parquet, Delta Lake, many other file systems, right? Then data processing, yeah, are you using Spark, what SQL engines you are using, and also about big data volume. Yeah, it's also about big data, but also you need to think that what are the big data? Big data can be huge, right? It can be terabytes of data, but also it can be many sources. Yeah, maybe data are actually not so big. Yeah, maybe they are just more gigabytes or smaller terabytes, but actually there are like hundreds of sources. Yeah, and also these different type of files formats. So everything this has some impact on this. Okay, so that was some introduction for big data. Now let me do some poll for you. So to do some interaction with you. For that, I prepared some polls. First one is about trends. So let me launch it and you can interactively work on that inside the Zoom. So now I'm launching the poll. And now you can start voting it. Yeah, so please read questions. Basically, which big data technology do you think is trending the most right now? And you can vote. So please, I will just go to the next slide and I will start some counter. You have 1 minute to vote. and then I will show you the results. So no worries, I will not hide it from you. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I see many votes. Thank you for that. Yeah, so let me end the poll and share results with you. So now you should be able to see big data in serverless architecture 1, actually. Yeah, that's good. Also, we have building data lakes and analytics from real data. No one is much interested in Spark. Okay. Thank you for your votes. So let's go further. Now I will talk about my experience, my lessons, and about some stories, right? So let me go to the first lesson, which is measure twice, but really cut just once when it comes to selecting technologies. For that, I have some real life stories. Yeah, so I was working for some project, and they decided to completely change architecture. And business asked us as a team, like, can you please come up with some architecture and build some new tool set and use some completely new architecture, basically based on the serverless tools. And we said, of course, like, okay, yeah, we can try to do that. Yeah, so we got some space to work on a framework. And then, it was businesses were very interested in this, right? So many other departments were asking us questions, how we are going to do these and other things. And also many of them just move some person closer to our team, and they were interested on the technology, what we are using, and they were trying to, learn something for them. And one of these departments decide that actually they don't like this technology, they don't like the serverless architecture, and somehow they want to use something else. Yeah, they somehow didn't fit their needs. So they change, right, and change the approach, and basically they create new team and they start building their own architecture. So yeah, you can imagine the situation, right? We are building some architecture, and at the same time, another department is building another architecture, which would be for the same purposes, right? It was basically for loading data from a source systems to data lake, yeah. And they will start building their own framework. Yeah, and you can imagine like there can be some benefits on that, but many downsides. And I will talk about it a little bit later. But this actually can happen in the big companies, right? When you have a strong department with strong business behind, which can basically pay these developers and force them, hey, we don't like something, we want something our own, we will have it under control, we don't want something what other departments is supporting, and so on. Yeah, so this is actually happening sometimes. For another project, I was working when they decide to, we had many reporting tools in company, yeah, and yeah, like Yellowfin, Tableau, like many others, and they somehow decide like, yeah, but for our purpose, we want one more, yeah, we want to add one more tool. And yeah, we were asking question like, why we have so many tools? Yeah, it's ridiculous, right? Adding one more tool, and when you have like 5-6 reporting tools, and they wanted to add one more, and that's actually interesting, like behavior behind that. Yeah, it's when you ask them questions, why they are doing this, right? Why they want to create their own architecture, why they want to add the new tools. Yeah, many of these answers can be, yeah, because we want some new tool because we like it more. We had experience behind that. We work with that tool in other company, and our team is familiar with this new tool. So they wanted to maybe create something what is more familiar to them. Yeah, and also from the architecture perspective, it can be something like they didn't like. Maybe they were okay with serverless architecture, but they thought like, oh, there will be too much coding and they don't have so many Python developers or something, and they want someone who maybe they have more people who are more database oriented, and they like tools like Informatica with the boxes and making spaghetti. Yeah, so that could be like approach of another team. Yeah, and basically that can happen. So yeah, these are basically real stories what happen. Yeah, and what are the benefits of this? So if you have two different solutions for the same thing, yeah, for the loading data from the source system to some targets to the data lake, then you are creating competitive environment. Yeah, and it's actually really happening. Yeah, when these two teams, they know about each other. Yeah, companies may be big, but they, through architects, this communication somehow come up. Yeah, and they are aware of, okay, so these other team, they are building something else, and the first development team start to be curious about like, okay, so what they're building, why they think this is better. Yeah, and this create a very competitive environment when they want to create features what other team doesn't have. Yeah, or be faster in something. But yeah, of course it has some downsides, but basically competitive environment is also something what is beneficial. Then we have basically this surface, or how to call it, like the both teams can come up with new ideas, like they need to differentiate somehow their own architecture. Yeah, they need to add some supporting another tools, or maybe supporting real time, and another team is maybe faster in delivery, or having other perks, right? So they are trying to differentiate also. And also, like, people get chance to decide which technology they prefer to work. Yeah, so basically when you have, yeah, that's what I was talking about, right? If you want to add a new tool, it doesn't matter whether it's a new architecture or a new reporting tool, they just want to work with something what is familiar for them. Yeah, so these are my benefits, but it also have some downsides, right? So downside can be, choosing a tool set can add more work to onboarding projects. Yeah, so that means the project which want to be onboarded, then they need to go and decide. Yeah, and that's tricky. Yeah, because if you have two tools which are very familiar, sometimes even they can be different in many aspects, but these onboarding projects, they don't want to use these differentials, right? These new features. They just want to load data from some source system to data lake, and both tools are doing it well. So which tool to choose? Yeah, it's hard. So then it became to be less transparent for the decision making. Yeah, so decisions started to be more political. It can be like, yeah, okay, we don't want to do some assessment for both tools and see like which one is actually better. We will go this direction because some team which is close to us is working the same tool with the same architecture, so we will follow that team and we'll be fine. Yeah. Yeah, but like it can raise some frustration in developers team. Maybe developer team can think like another architecture is better, and so on. Yeah, so this transparency is important, and somehow you can lose it. And yeah, of course, like it's obvious, every tool what you add to the architecture needs to be supported. and it's adding complexity to the infrastructure. So that's obvious downside. So what is the takeaway from this? Yeah, the first is like, do your work and write down any discrepancies and recommendations. Yeah, that means architects need to think about these tools, these architectures, and deep dive into it and write it down. What is the benefits of the architectures? What is the downsides, to help projects for onboarding? Yeah, to make, because like literally when I was working for that project, some onboarding project need to do assessment. Literally, like they were in a position, architects can't decide. Yeah, both tools are doing the same. So what we are supposed to do? Like, are we supposed to do assessment? Like try both tools? It's wasting money. Yeah? So this is not good when it's happening. Yeah. Then be transparent. That means you have developer teams. They want to know what's going on. They are not stupid. If you decide something because of some pseudo arguments, they will know about that. They will feel it. They will see like, okay, so there was no constructive discussion, nothing like benefit downside. Somehow, somewhere up, just decide. Yeah, that could happen, and it's not good for developers because it increased the frustration. And IT teams need to support business teams by teaching them how to use existing tools. Yeah, so basically, even if you are building new architecture within framework, or you are adding new reporting tool, maybe there is some reasons why they want to use this tool, which is not reasonable. Like it doesn't make sense. Yeah, maybe another tool actually have this feature too, and they don't know about that. Yeah, maybe people just of course, like this, for them it's easier to use some new tool which they are aware of and they have experience in it, but basically they don't know like what other tools are doing. Maybe some other tool is even better than what they think. Yeah. So these are my 3 main takeaways from this. Okay. So the second lesson. My second lesson is communication works for those who work at it. So I had a chance, to work for a development team, and like in these companies, you have usually supporting teams separated. They can sit in the same building, but maybe in a different floor, or they can be even a different building or different country. Yeah, it can happen in the global companies very often. So in this case, it was actually a different floor, and we decided to relocate a team member of the supporting team to development. Yeah, and basically we enabled him to build product with us. Yeah, and that was something like, okay, we see like the supporting teams were frustrated and about the bugs and bug fixing, and they didn't understand like why it's happening. And after we relocated the team member of the supporting team, and he will start building the product with us, then he was able to understand like what's going on and why these bugs happening and so on. So it was helpful eventually. Yeah. For another project, we had a different story. Like it can be tough with allocation. So we had a support team actually which is in different country, and we didn't decide to relocate him and start working on the product, but at least we relocated him to the team in the mean that we just move him from different country to the country where we had the development team, and we actually create a sitting place for him next to the developers. Yeah, and that's also like the way how we can improve communication between teams. Yeah, basically move supporting team closer to development team, so they will be able to collaborate more, talking about stuff like if something is happening, some bug, right? They can talk to each other. They can even go for a lunch, many other things. So if you don't have a chance, to basically allocate some capacity of this person for the development, then just think about maybe, getting closer to developers is also worth it. Then we have, then I have a last story, which is not so success story. I was working for a project which were delivering some data to data lake, and then data warehouse teams were taking this data, and they couldn't understand what we are doing in data lake. We had a little bit different architecture, and we did some transformation in data lake to use power of Hadoop, and they were very separated. They were in a different building, and even we tried to go through workshops. We tried to teach them how we are working. There is some transformation. They never touched the code. And when they didn't see it personally, like they don't have any hands on a code, then they couldn't completely understand, and many misunderstandings were happening. When we went through delivery process to testing, they had to fix many things, right? And they couldn't. It basically decreased the quality of the delivery, and that wasn't the success story. But like if they could just send some team member, relocate him to our team, and just work on one pipeline, to understand him, like, okay, how we are working and what we are doing there, and see exactly what transformation we are generating, maybe it could be better. But it wasn't. Okay, so this was basically my real life story. So what are the benefits from it? This relocation and intensive collaboration helps the support team understand the technology and improves constructive discussion. Basically, that's it, right? The support team can come up with new ideas. They can think like, okay, we need to maybe add something to the logs, right? Or basically increase the quality of the delivery in some way. What will be beneficial also for a supporting team. So basic involvement of the other team can improve the quality of the delivery, and then it decreases frustration in teams. So they start to understand what's going on there, and why the bugs are happening, and they can see like, okay, it's not so easy to not make bugs, right? Because the process is basically not easy, and it's development always. There's also some downsides. It consumes the capacity of the supporting member or any team member who will be relocated. So the solutions can be, as I said, move person closer to development team. He maybe doesn't have to be completely allocated or partially allocated to development team. And not everyone is both a good learner and good teacher. So basically, think about who can do actually this position. This relocation is not for everyone. You can have a smart guy who can learn something very fast, but he's maybe very introverted. So he don't want to speak to other colleagues or something. And he need to basically communicate. He need to teach other members. So that's important. And vice versa. Like someone can be slower learner, but he can be a little bit extroverted, and he likes teaching others, but it will take more time for him to learn basically and get the technology. So not everyone fits in this. So takeaways, invest in teams, not only in individuals. Relocation programs can be expensive, and it's difficult to make them. You need to arrange many things, but in the long term, I believe it's worth it. And it is a process. It's not a one-time experience. Basically, it takes time This person needs to sit there for some time, months, yeah. It's not days or weeks, yeah. This person needs to understand the process, need to know like what's going on there. Okay, so this was my second lesson. So again, to do a little bit interaction, another poll, last one. So let me trigger it to link second poll. So second poll will be about your experience. I would like to know like if you experience something what I was talking about. So let me launch the poll. So question is easy. Which behaviors have you experienced in your projects? Let me again make some countdown. It actually check for you how many of you are still listening. Good. Still many of you. Last 10 seconds for a break. Okay, let me end poll and share results. So winner is implementation or deployment of redundant tools. Actually, it's surprising because many times it's really expensive, and I thought it would be like not so often, but it seems more often than I thought. Okay, then we have also some non-transparent tool selection, misunderstandings between the development and support teams, no description of the pros and cons of a solution from the architects. Yeah, I believe if I would choose the multiple options, yeah, you could maybe click on all of these in some companies. Yeah, so thank you for your votes. Okay, so let me move on to third lesson. So my third lesson will be about think about data as a commodity. So what is real stories behind that? Too many data sources to load. I was working for some older company, and they were building these pipelines in an old way, and basically, the company has some countable number of source systems. Yeah, let's say like 100, 120, something like that. And in this you can imagine like, okay, 100, 120 is not so many. There can be basically some plan, and you can think like, okay, new sources haven't been added so much, right? So it's not something what will be growing, right? And it's more like something stable. So you can think like, okay, if we will deliver one source system in 15 main days, that's completely fine. Yeah, it's reasonable amount of time, or maybe it's even fast in 15 main days. Yeah, but let's say I had this experience with 15 main days for one source system. But then so when I moved to newer projects, we come up with the options like, oh, we can speed it up, yeah, and we can deliver one source system in 7 man days, yeah. And I was like, okay, good team, yeah, we are able to work fast, yeah, 7 man days for one source system, it's not bad. And then we started working for the project, and the project manager came to me and he was asking like, so how long it takes to deliver one source system? And I was like, 7 man days. 7 man days. we had hundreds of source systems. It's not possible. We need to deliver it in 1 year. We need to do it faster. I was like, what? Like, what faster? What do you expect? Like 3 mandates for the source system. 3 mandates, okay. So let's think about it. Yeah. So imagine we built some architecture and we were quite happy about that, but it has some constraints, right? Then suddenly they decided to basically change the requirement. Yeah, they want to speed up the process of this pipeline delivery. So okay, we had to change the architecture, but it wasn't so easy, yeah, because some of the components, like you can imagine, like using Power General and everything stored in some modeling tool. How to get rid of it? Yeah, it's not easy. It's a huge application. So we had some difficulties with changing the architecture. And so based on that, yeah, we started building a new solution, yeah, for generating data ingest pipelines. It was semi-manual and self-service approach to spinning up delivery, yeah, and it was built on AWS platform as a serverless architecture. When I'm talking about the serverless architecture, it's literally serverless, so basically not EC2 machines, no virtual machines. Everything was built in the way that architecture was built at the time when the whole pipeline was triggered. Yeah, so basically, me and our team were able to basically focus on this development, and we went through some iterations. Yeah, and in development process, it's important to know that you are able to do that, and companies allow actually to rebuild the whole architecture again. Yeah, as I said on the beginning, right? They basically force us to throw away old architecture and build new one. But that's a great experience. Yeah, that actually enable us to learn from the experience from the past and build something new based on that experience what we had. And not many teams had this opportunity. Yeah, and it's most interesting opportunity what you can get nowadays, to build something new based on the experience what you get. But what benefits, yeah, is from this? So spinning up pipeline development can increase data scientists and data analysts' interest in getting data in a more standardized way. That means basically these data scientists and data analysts have ability to get the data faster, yeah, and it's still standardized way, yeah. So basically, values are showing the same way. You can think about like dates and date values and having a time zone everywhere, yeah, and somehow standardized, and many more things are basically set, right? How we are getting this data. So the standardization of data ingest increase the data quality of work, yeah, and serverless architecture itself. Yeah, for us, we think it's beneficial. Yeah, of course, I am not going to talk much about this topic because it can be like a presentation for itself, but I see it as beneficial. What are the downsides? You need to think like when you speed up the process, it's like, imagine you can have pipeline in 2-3 mandates. Yeah, it's very fast. That basically means everyone will be creating sources too easy, yeah, and you will end up with having too many pipelines which are actually not used much. So you need to manage this life cycle, yeah, and to do checks like is this pipeline still loading data or not? Is the data used or not? Yeah, and cut them. Yeah, be able to cut them and manage that. It takes time to build the architecture in serverless, and overall, every framework needs time. It needs time to be built and developed, and eventually delivered in a form that it's usable. Yeah, and many times even first iteration, yeah, is something very basic, and you need to do more additions and more features. And transparent costs. Yeah, now you can think like, hold on, like downside, transparent cost doesn't make sense. But it is actually downside if you think in the way as a developer thinks. So imagine the situation, you have a serverless architecture. Everything what you trigger there, it basically costs you money. Yeah. And you are developer and building some pipeline, and you need to test something. You will trigger the pipeline, and it will cost you $30. Will you do it or not? Yeah. Depends on how are the conditions, right? So basically, these create some blocks in the developer's mind. Yeah, they need to think about, should I do it? Should I do it? They are not sure. They are maybe stepping back and maybe trying less features than they should, and so on. So this is quite a downside. Yeah, and in this way, what helps is when you basically assure the developers that we have enough money for development. No worries, we have budget there. If we need more money for development, we will give you more. Yeah. You need to understand that serverless also costs something. Yeah, it's maybe not even cheaper, but yeah, you need to understand that these developers can create these blocks in their minds. So what are the key takeaways from this? Build a framework for pipeline generation. It will pay off in the long run. Yeah, so it's saving money on support, and it's unified way to give analytics team success in a standardized way. Yeah, frameworks, it's still better to build frameworks than something what is manual coded, and every transformation is basically coded manually, and then it ends up as a mess. And then think about how to load dataset to target system faster. Yeah, it's open new possibilities for business customers. They stop thinking about how they are loading data or finding the budget, So because basically it give even very small customers without big budget access to data. Yeah, imagine like having a small team and they want some data, and they have option to build it by themselves. Yeah, they can write some code and just pull out the data. Yeah, but use performance of the database from where you are loading data. You basically need some bigger budget if you want to do it standardized way, or from data warehouse or somewhere else. So if you speed up this process, basically even smaller teams can think about how to work with data instead of concentrating on how to take data from the source system. Okay, so fourth lesson, involve business from the beginning. It's a last lesson, I promise. No more lessons today. Involve business from the beginning. The real-time story behind that is, we implemented framework from scratch without involving the business. I was talking about it today. They forced us to build some framework, and we had some experience, so we know like what to expect, what to build. But we spent many months, we reading documentation and writing some code, and we end up in some dead ends, which is good, yeah, for our experience. It's important also. But then we end up, with some use cases, and we find out that okay, but our use cases actually doesn't fit much in the use cases what actual our future project will want, and we need to somehow, in some moment think about, okay, guys, we really need some project to be onboarded on this framework. It will be still not used for some time, but we still need real use cases. Without that, we cannot able to create some architecture. And then loading all data sets in the data lake to prepare it for the analyst and data scientist was the wrong dogma. So, in companies, I heard that they want to load, data many times in advance. So basically take a data from the source system and load them to data lake. This was also my experience, right? So the project wants to, okay, we have hundreds of sources, so let's load 50 of them in a half year, yeah, and the data warehouse team, they will catch up, yeah, later. They will use one source by another one, and eventually they will be able to create the reports from that, yeah. But it's wrong dogma, and I will tell you why in a downside. But first, let's go through benefits, yeah. So if you involve business a little bit later, yeah, it gives developers space to focus on technology and ideas. So you can end up in the dead ends, and you can try new things, and you can think actually how the framework can be created the best. And loading all data sets ahead of time, yeah, gets data closer to the data scientists and data analysts, yeah. So it will be ready anytime. It will be like basically closer to developers in data lake, to analysts in data lake, yeah, and they will be able to get data from there faster. But it has some downsides. Yeah, so basically if developers have more space, they might build a solution that doesn't fit real use cases. Yeah, and that's something we need to think about, right? What is the right time when to involve the business? Sooner is better than later. Yeah, real use cases are important. And the second downside is like source systems are changing, and business need to pay to support these changes and impacts. Yeah. Imagine we loaded 50 source systems. Yeah, great, in half year, quite impressive. But imagine how many of them they're able to consume, how many of them they're able to create reports about them. Yeah, it's tricky. It takes time. Yeah, and we end up, we were supporting all of these source systems, but eventually we had to cut them off. Yeah, because we had to, yeah, because the source system changed. Yeah, they changed the API, so the pipeline stopped worked. Yeah, and we need to update the code. We need to update the framework a little bit, add some new feature, which will count with some change what they did in a source system. Yeah, and these are some additional costs, right? What you don't want to have, and that's why I think it's wrong dogma, because in my experience it wasn't worth it. Yeah, we basically were frustrated why we are supporting some solution, why we are supporting some pipelines when no one is using them. Yeah, and literally we got email like, hey guys, we are changing our API, you need to change your solution, we are switching it to some another API version 2 or something. What would you do then? What would you do? You need to bother business teams and ask for money. Hey guys, we need to implement this. We need more money to be able to change the system. Yeah, and these are basically the downsides of this approach. So, what are the main takeaways? Think about when is the right time to involve business, right? And so yeah, the business can give developers space to work on framework, but at the same time, they should provide specific use cases. The sooner it is, better for the developers. They will know like what to concentrate on. And yeah, and the dogma is like this loading data sets in front. Yeah. So like for me and from my experience, I feel like it's better to invest in a framework which speed up the process. Yeah, and then analysts can basically load data when they need it, instead of spend budget in front and loading all data in advance to data lake. Yeah, for me it's better to have this approach. Okay, so that was basically my last lesson. Now we can end up with some summaries. So lessons, what I learned, basically some lessons for you. So be constructive and honest when choosing technologies. Yeah, so basically force this discussion, try to find benefits, but also downsides of every technology, what you are working with and what you want to work with. Have people work with different teams. Yeah, so basically relocation programs, are a good thing. Yeah, it's many times it's underrated. You can think like it's for juniors, but it's also good for seniors. They can learn something else. They can change their perspective. It's also good for them. Deliver the data set from source system faster. Yeah, that's what I was talking about. Yeah, for me, it's better to speed up the pipeline than load everything in advance. Yeah, everything in advance means you need to support it. If you are able to load data faster, the data analyst will use it. Yeah, basically something what they can do faster, and it will be easier for them to get this data. And create solution around business use cases. Yeah, try to involve business and try to find some real use cases. What you need for your framework. Yeah, so basically you can see, it wasn't only me. I was leading many of that projects. In some of them, I was a developer, an analyst, and solution architect. So there was a whole team, who was working on this, and we had this experience. We were able to go through this, and go through these iterations and learn from that, and that's important for everyone, because we can use this experience for our future projects, and we have already this experience, and that's the best way how to use it, right? The experience like this can be used basically to avoid wasting money for the big companies. So thank you for your attention, and see you sometimes in the future. Also, we have some survey, so if you have a chance, please, you can use this survey about this presentation. I will also copy you the link to the chat to this survey. So basically you can, oh, sorry, I need to send it to everyone. Okay, so I would like to ask you to fill the some survey about this presentation. What do you think? And maybe let me go through your questions. So I see in the chat, like, it may not be a fight between a redundant tool and a good tool. The fight may be between a tool that was won in a proper competition and must be used, and the tool that may be prettier and easier to learn and flexible. SAP-BO and Microsoft Power BI. Yeah, sometimes it's like that, but actually in my experience, eventually they kept both tools. Yeah, literally, like, they basically decide to cut off this tool too late, and whole business was already onboarded on the both architectures, and they try to cut off one of the two, and then they realize that cutting off one of them will cost them so much money that they would rather keep them both. That's not a good experience. Yeah, maybe that's also good to mention that it's good, to set some deadline from the beginning, like, okay, after a few months, we need to decide which one we will cut off, and one of the you need to end. Yeah, and don't give too much time. If they didn't evolve enough, that's maybe the reason why to cut off the tool. Yeah, maybe it was better to basically use another tool because second tool is too slow to get, right? To get the knowledge about it and so on, and it's too slow to build something in that second tool. So it can be also some good experience. Okay. So I don't see any more questions. If you have any more questions, just please put it in the chat. Otherwise, again, I would ask you if you can fill the survey. And yeah, thank you for your attention. Okay. So let me stop sharing, or maybe I will keep it for a while. You can use some modern technology and use QR code. Also, we have some context there, big data for banking. It's our blog. You can use it if you want to. Okay, thank you and bye.